I got you fine. Can you guys hear me now?
We got you
No,
good.
it was so
Okay.
much better when I couldn't hear you. I was trying to read your lips.
Of course, you've got an AJ day. Evan, the anticipation is killing me. Do you think the Rangers won the trade deadline so far up until this point with whatever we've got left to go, 4.5 hours?
Well, I think to Russ's point a few minutes ago, right? They've added four legitimate pitchers. And yes, they needed a lot of work in the bullpen. The bullpen has been the problem all year. But you look at bringing in Montgomery and Max Scherzer to that rotation. Now you're going to push a couple of those established starters, whether it's Dane Dunning right now and Martin Perez or Dunning and Heaney. You're going to push a couple of those established starters into relief roles in the middle of that bullpen. And that was really where they needed to kind of get some more stability. You've got Will Smith and Aroldis Chapman at the back end. They've both been very good this year. So if you can build a little bit more stability in the middle of the bullpen, I think you're going to be a much better team overall. And so when you look at the trickle down effect for me, it's almost like they've added five or six pitchers to their overall mix and the way they're going to use them. They've changed so many roles.
Evan, how long is Evaldi going to be out for? Because to me, he's the key with Scherzer, a healthy Montgomery. You throw Evaldi in there, you have Heaney, Dunning, like you said, someone's going to have to bounce the bullpen, whether it's Martin Perez or Dunning or one of them. So to me, that sets up great for a playoff series. You're running Scherzer, Evaldi, Montgomery, Perez, Heaney, Dunning, whoever it is, and then you can bounce some of those guys to the bullpen. That's a pretty formidable staff. So what's the timeline for Evaldi to come back?
Well, the Rangers and Nathan have both said, look, it's probably going to be real close to the 2 week minimum. Um, I think they're going to err with whatever caution they have. Certainly, adding the two starters gives them a little bit more room to work with if they can kind of stabilize things. They didn't look great against the Padres. And to the discussion you guys were having a few minutes ago, right? The Padres, you look at that roster and you look at what they can run out there, and it is one of the great mysteries of baseball. Why that team doesn't have a better record this year, but the Rangers didn't look good against that team. So I think that they want to give Nathan as much time as they possibly can to get healthy and get right, whether that's 2 weeks or whether it's four. I think that remains to be seen. The big concern last year was there was a drop in velocity as the season wore on. This year we've seen a drop in velocity as well, and so that's going to raise those red flags for the Rangers.
Evan, you've been on that Rangers beat for a long time, and when you watch what the old regime did with John Daniels there leading the charge in Texas, now to what this new front office with Chris Young now leading the charge, even though he was brought in under Daniels, what have been the big differences that you've seen in how the two front offices operated?
Well, I think when John Daniels was brought in 2005 at the age of 28, I mean, he was basically having to turn that roster over pretty quickly, right? You got to the 2007 season and you were trading away Mark Teixeira and trading away whatever pieces you had. Chris Young has come into a situation where he took over the team for good last August with a club with a ownership group that was already investing significant dollars in the team. They had already spent all that money on Simeon and Seager and John Gray, and they continued to build on that this offseason. I think once you get to a point where they are contending, you look at what the Rangers did in 2010 when they went out and got Cliff Lee in the middle of being bankrupt. They figured out a way to acquire Cliff Lee for that trade run, and he made for that playoff run. He made all the difference in the world, made all the difference in the American League Division Series, and gave the Rangers their first playoff win ever. To what Chris Young has done right now, and go out and get an established number one pitcher. We all know Max Scherzer's numbers have not been that great this year, that he's not been the Max that we have come to expect. But this is a guy who started 7 different game ones in postseason. He started game 7 of a World Series. He's still certainly capable of fronting a rotation, a good rotation, come playoff time.
Evan, what else? Let's put you in Chris Young's shoes for a second. If you're Chris Young, what else do you go get? A bullpen piece? A bench piece? Do you go maybe look for catching in case Jonah Heim can't come back? What's the one piece that's keeping away? And let's not forget now, the Rangers don't have a big lead. They have what is it? I think it's a half a game lead in the West. It's not like it was 5 or 6 games. I mean, this is going to be a race now to the end. So what's the one piece if you're Chris Young, you say, we want this?
I think right now the Rangers are spending some time today on trying to figure out the catching situation because Jonah's situation is very much undetermined. He's got what amounts to a tendon sheath injury in that left wrist. He's got a high threshold for pain, but that's a difficult injury to play through. And maybe he can play through it and only swing from the left hand side, can't play from the right hand side. But however you add it up, taking Jonah Heim out of the mix is a significant loss, AJ. I mean, this is a guy who leads the American League in WAR among catchers, and he's done it on both sides of the ball. He's been as good a framer as there is in baseball this year. He's been good at throwing, and he's got 70 RBIs and 15 home runs right now. He's been a good offensive contributor, and you see what happened to the Rangers offense over the weekend without Hahn and obviously still without Seager. They scored 4 runs in 3 games at San Diego. So I do think they are spending some time on catching, and I do think this is the situation right now. Since you retired, catching has gotten thin. It was much deeper when you were still playing, but the catching situation around the league is thin. You're looking to try and add some kind of asset, but you're not going to find a guy who's going to help you on both sides of the ball on the market. You know, somebody like Austin Hedges has run a staff, is a really good framer, is a veteran, isn't going to cost you a whole lot of money or a lot in terms of prospects. Maybe that's a guy that you try and add for the next couple of weeks or month to try and get your staff through until you do get Jonah Heim back. He's a guy I would think the Rangers are spending some time on today. I think Yasmani Grandal would certainly be a guy whose name comes up in some conversations. But catching options are thin. And I think that with the Rangers having done everything that they needed to do pitching-wise, and I really think they do, certainly if another bullpen arm came available, and listen, if you're talking to the Pirates, you might as well bring up David Bednar or Colin Holderman's names with them. But save for that, I think catching would probably be the place the Rangers try and touch up some stuff before the end of the day.